March 20th, 2020, a Friday. I was a normal 29-year-old guy, thinking the pandemic was no big deal, strolling into work like I always did. Of course, that was my last day in the office before the pandemic was real. My last day in public for a while. It was the last of a lot of things for me. Grocery shopping, restaurants, commuting, really any event conceivable away from home. It's the kind of isolation that roots itself without you knowing. It changes how you interact with people, your willingness to interact with people. It changes your speech patterns. Sometimes you forget words and inflections. This was also before I knew I even had a lifelong anxiety disorder and ADHD, a volatile cocktail, as you can imagine. I'd ask questions like, why does my chest hurt? Why does it feel like I'm about to pass out? Why am I nauseous all the time? Is this COVID? Why are my neighbors out to get me? Is it a heart attack? The inner dialogue can bounce around in your head and twist up in itself like a rubber band ball. You get trapped inside a loop of your own thoughts. Not unlike a bundle of cables sprawling out of a wall of Eurorack modules. You lose yourself. You stop growing. I didn't get to the point where I stopped caring, though. The very, very short of it is that I found a therapist, I got medicated, and it started to change my life. The veil of anxiety began to lift and my sense of self surfaced. As many of us did, we found new hobbies and nurtured old ones. I was always curious about audio hardware, but I figured it was way out of my realm. Too expensive, I said. But hey, I wasn't driving pretty much anywhere those days and had a bit of money saved up. It was time to plan a Eurorack. Wildly, this all happened in the span of that 2020 year. I mean, I still wasn't going anywhere, but I joined Ben Jordan's Discord community and became a mod. I handcrafted my case with nothing but a circular saw. Talked to some electrical engineers to make sure I wasn't about to die, and powered it with some cheap PSUs from Amazon. Still working, by the way. December 28th, 2020. I flicked the power switch that first time and watched all those lights come on, nose to the jacks to see if I fucked it up. All was fine. Isolated, but fine. Most of 2021 then was a blur. December 28th, 2021. Almost exactly a year later from that first power on, I had a thought. Small at first, almost a nagging thought. You know, I don't really feel like I like using he, him very much. Doesn't really describe me, I said to my wife on a long car ride. I think I want to use he, they. When I tried my first pair of leggings, the feeling was strange, but good. Really good. I mean, it really is a modern pant that I think everyone should wear, but it was so out there for me. It was like putting on a second skin. I was starting to think this nagging thought in my head was more than just an idea. My identity was definitely doing something. I didn't really have the words to explain what I was feeling, but things started to make sense. I never felt comfortable in traditional men's clothing. In crowds, I always felt the opposite. Maybe it was less of a being in crowds anxiety, but more of a not feeling myself thing. I had never looked in the mirror and felt quite great with my body. I started to feel a lot of what I know now as dysphoria. My path through life just wasn't aligning quite right with the me I wanted to be. It's hard when you feel these things but don't know what to do with them. Words like trans and HRT were really intimidating to me at the time. But there would be those times where I would think about it and my heart would flutter. So in comes Reddit. I found myself stalking the trans timelines subreddit for hours, seeing people's transition journeys, learning about what gender really means, and trying to figure out how far I wanted to take this feeling. Clothes were an easy choice. I mean, anyone can wear whatever they want. So I started getting more leggings, flowy tops, even some heeled boots. Tried painting my nails, wearing makeup, got my ears pierced. June 5th, 2022. 6 months later, I was going by they, them, identifying fully as non-binary. I felt so uncomfortable being associated with men and male culture in America, being in public wearing traditional male clothing, like I was about to jump out of my skin. I wasn't comfortable with my body, simple as. But when I started to embrace my inner self, I would be out in public and I would feel taller. It's an interesting feeling. I had a confidence in me I had never felt before. Then it dawned on me. I'm stalking trans timelines, looking at people questioning on Ask Transgender, but the simplest answer was right in front of me. Yes, you are trans, my dude. That was pretty scary, thinking of the potential body changes, personality changes, monumental task of telling my predominantly intolerant family. What I did figure out, though, looking at all these subreddits, was that the process is a very long one and very gradual. I think that's why it can seem like a shock when someone you haven't seen in a while is presenting very differently than you remember. January 7th, 2023. Well, I started HRT in spite of all of this. I knew the risks, but I wanted the changes. And as they started, I too started to feel better about myself. Initially, I didn't think I wanted all of the changes that would come with HRT, but I would look at myself in the mirror and have almost daily revelations. Is this really what people who love themselves feel? Yep, that's the ticket. April 30th, 2023. Fast forward several months, Knobcon tickets went on sale. I saw the notification, almost immediately jumped on it. What the hell are you doing? You have major COVID anxiety and flight anxiety and food anxiety and public trans anxiety. Well, it was one of those important times where I personified my anxiety and kindly told it to fuck right off. I was going to this event whether my brain liked it or not. Easy to say in the moment. Lots of work to be done before then. What have you done? My anxiety would say. We can't do this. We must stay home where it's comfortable and safe. You know what though? What? Fuck off. I booked my hotel room the same day I bought my ticket to Knobcon. I learned of other people going to Knobcon too. My friends, B and Dylan, Ben Jordan, Venus Theory, Red Means Recording. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. A chance to meet these folks in person for the first time seemed appealing. It kept me going. September 7th, 2023. Okay, I concede you can go to Knobcon. That's the spirit. And I'm not going to turn off my transness for anyone. I brought my cutest clothes, my best makeup, coolest earrings, and badass boots. I was finally ready. And flight day came. To my ultimate surprise, aside from the eventual anxious bowels of the evening, things went smoothly. Well, mostly. Car rentals. I suppose I ought to give a bit of an explainer on Knobcon. It's a fairly niche convention historically taking place in Schaumburg, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. I had never been to either of these places before, so I took that as an added bonus. In fact, I had never been to any kind of con in my life. Shout out to Dylan and B for showing me the what's what. I was very out of my element. At Knobcon, like most any convention, you get to meet and interact with people who align with your interests. In this case, everything audio. Synthesizers, sequencers, live shows, drop-in jam sessions, merch, and lots of cables. Honestly, this was nearly a cable convention disguised as a synthcon. Even the software has cables in it. I'm looking at you, Reason, Cardinal, Rack. On the first day of Knobcon, I had fun just walking around. I was intimidated, but I was comfortable. Having earplugs is a nice bonus. You can retreat into your own headspace, but you can still interact. It's one of those tricks you learn as you glide through an anxious life. And that's the thing. Anxiety doesn't go away, but you find ways to make it better. Knobcon overall was great. I mean, it was awesome, but really it's the connections that I made there which really stuck. I'd been so isolated without realizing it. Yeah, I can hang out with these people online, and that's totally a valid way to socialize. Being out more than socially, at least for me, was an entirely fresh experience. If you've been following me for a while, you've likely picked up on the fact that I created the software sequencer MIDI Noose. Honestly, MIDI Noose was an isolation project. It ultimately brought me closer to like-minded folks. At Knobcon, I wasn't quite a star, but it was really fun when people knew of MIDI Noose and met me in person. I rarely show my face, and most people just have my voice as a reference. Ironically, I was very not stealth while being very stealth. I was out fully as my in-progress trans self at Knobcon, at a convention. I didn't hide it for anyone, and I was welcomed in all circles and conversations I had that weekend. It was a lifetime experience, which is why I even brought up Knobcon instead of just having a coming out story. I met wonderful people. I had conversations I'll never forget, and I hope to be back to Knobcon next year. The con is nice, but the people are nicer. I was waiting for my plane at O'Hare, minding my own business, when someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I don't mean to intrude, but my friend and I are huge fans of your work." Obviously, they didn't mean MIDI Noose, so I questioned. That's when they asked me if I was Chris Tyson from Mr. Beast. I was honestly not even upset. I was flattered. I felt seen. That pretty much sold the entire weekend for me with a nice little cherry on top. So here we are, nearly October of 2023 now. Still on HRT. I went from being an anxious man to a proud NB. Still a little anxious. If you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with transition, if you just feel isolated, know that you aren't alone, and that it does get better. There are paths to happiness, some lying in wait, some behind challenges, but I found there is never not a solution. Take care of yourself and keep creating.